Hello, so right in this class, we're going to look at the types of numbers, and I'm going to be very quick and very precise and very clear. So under the types of numbers that you need to know, there should be about 10 or so of them. So I'm going to run through everything. And I've drawn right here, right below a number line. Now, I believe that we're very much familiar with the number line, and we're going to everything that we need to know has everything to do with the number line. Now, the first one that we're going to look at are what are called integers. And I believe by now you understand what integers are. Integers just include all positive and negative numbers. So you can see, right, this 0 separates negative numbers and positive numbers. So we get negative numbers, we add them together with the 0. So negative numbers, the 0, and positive numbers are what we call integers. All right, so those are the first type of numbers that you need to understand. So integers are all negative, positive, and the 0 term. Okay, so now we're going to separate now the negatives from the positives. All right, so if we branch off right here from 0 all the way to the right, so 0 and all positive numbers will form what are called whole numbers. All right, now whole numbers are also called non-negative numbers. So why are they called non-negative numbers? This is because they include 0. So if 0 is included among the positive numbers, they are called non-negative numbers. So non-negative numbers is the other name for whole numbers. Now, from the whole numbers, which are non-negative numbers, if we remove 0, we remain with what are called positive numbers. So positive numbers, which we are all familiar with, they're also called what? Natural numbers. So I hope you get the difference between positive numbers and non-negative numbers. Non-negative numbers do not include 0. Non-negative numbers include 0. Positive numbers do not include 0. Okay, we are now going to move on to the next stage where we're going to define what are called rational numbers. I have a separate class for what are called rational numbers and how to prove that numbers are rational or irrational. But for this class, I'll just define them that rational numbers, these are numbers that can be expressed as a fraction. So in other ways, we have got P over Q. So you can watch my other class. It's on YouTube. You can just search for proving rational numbers. The other one, they're called irrational numbers. So irrational numbers, these are numbers that cannot be expressed in form of P over Q. So P over Q can just be any numbers, okay? But this is not my interest. Like I mentioned, I have the other class on this. So the other types of numbers that you need to look at are real numbers. Now, real numbers, okay, so you get real numbers when you get rational numbers and you add irrational numbers to them. You get both of these two, put them together, we form what are called real numbers. So real numbers are simply both rational and irrational numbers together. All right. Now, this is where the body thing comes in, where we have familiarity with these terms, but I want you to pay so much attention to them. So the first one, they're called even numbers. All right. Now, even numbers, we know that even numbers, these are numbers that are divisible by 2. So meaning 2 can go into them without leaving a remainder. For example, we talk about numbers such as 4. So if 4 divided by 2, we're going to get a 2 without leaving a remainder. But for example, if we say 5 divided by 2, this will be 2 remainder something, right? So 5 is not an even number because 2 cannot go into it without leaving a remainder. Okay, now one of the questions that most students would ask me is 0, if we do 0, if you get a calculator and say 0 over 2, the answer is going to give you 0, right? So is there any remainder? No. So does that make 2 to be, it is 0 rather, to be an even number or not? So now the answer depends on what type of even numbers are you going to look at. So remember, even numbers. Okay, so if we're talking about even numbers, I'll ask you, are you talking about non-negative? So even numbers, we can talk about non-negative, right? So non-negative numbers, or you can talk about positive or natural numbers. So if I ask you to give me a list of even numbers that are non-negative, so non-negative even numbers, it means we're including 0. So it means we start from 0, and then we go to 2, then we say 4, 6, and so on and so forth. So non-negative even numbers will start from 0. So 0 is an even number. Why? Because 2 can go into it without leaving a remainder. But if I ask you to give me a list of only natural even numbers or positive even numbers, then we're going to start from where? We're going to start from 2. All right. So this is very cardinal when it comes to dealing with sets, because you're going to be given something like this, and this might make you lose marks if you don't understand it. So hope that is clear. The second last type of number that I'd love us to look at are called odd numbers. All right. Okay. So now odd numbers, these are numbers, the opposite of even numbers, are called odd numbers. All right. So just the opposite of even numbers, where they are called what? Odd numbers. So in other ways, if we have 1, we talk about 2, we talk about 3, we talk about 4, and so on and so forth. These are numbers that cannot be, they're not divisible by 2. For example, we looked at 5. We can talk about 3. You can talk about 7. All numbers that 2 cannot go into, they are called what? They are called odd numbers. So in other ways, talk about all the numbers, natural numbers, remove even numbers, what you're going to remain with. So let me talk about 4, and then we have 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on and so forth. Let's remove all the even numbers. What you're remaining with here are called what? Odd numbers. All right. So that is that. I hope that is clear. The last type that we're going to look at are called prime numbers. Now, prime numbers, okay, this is where we have another debate here as well. So look at prime numbers. These are numbers that have only 2 factors, 1 and itself. All right. So they only have 2 factors, 1 and itself. So let's say, for example, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's talk about maybe 5. Is 5 a prime number or not? We're going to ask ourselves how many factors, how many numbers can go into 5 without leaving a remainder? Apparently, it's only 1 and 5. So how many factors are these? 1, 2. So it only has 2 factors, and that is 1 and itself. Talk about numbers such as 3. How many numbers can go into 3? None. It's only 1 and 3 itself. So these are all called prime numbers. Talk about 5. Is 5 nines rather? So is 9 a prime number? Obviously, what are the factors of 9? We have 1, we have 3, we have 9 itself. So these are 3 factors. So 9 is not a prime number. All right. Now, the last question I'm going to ask you is 1 a prime number? So 1, is it a prime number or not? Let's try to look at this. So if you have to ask if 1 is a prime number or not, let's look at the factors of 1. How many factors does 1 have? So we have talked about how many numbers can go into 1? It's only 1, isn't it? It's only 1. So how many factors are these? It's only 1, isn't it? But the definition of prime numbers is that prime numbers, these are numbers that have 2 factors, and that is 1 and itself. So now how many factors does 1 have? It only has 1 factor. So only 1 can go into 1. So because it does not meet this qualification, it means 1 is not a prime number. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next class. Hope that was clear.